guys, Frank with Tiny Plastic Spaceman here, and I just wanted to record this video as quick as I could, just to give my impressions of using the new Citadel Color contrast paint system. I used it today at the Warhammer Fest, which took place in Coventry, England today. It's what, the 11th of May 2019. Contrast is going to be out in June, so not very long now, and my first impressions, pretty good. Definitely a thumbs up. Now, it's not meant to completely replace your preferred painting system or all your paints or anything like that, and I'm sure by now you've seen the Warhammer community video that's been done about it, and probably read lots of things from other people who've been, but I used it. I actually took video of me using it at the demo pod area where they were doing basically just letting people have a go with various Poxwalker models, which have lots of fabric, but especially lots of skin and horns and things like that. And also Stormcast Eternal, Retributor, whatever, I'm not sure what models these are. So the video's not the greatest, but I do have some up-close photos and a little bit of video of the kind of finished models. So I'll let you have a look at those while I just kind of talk a bit. Games Workshop has been teasing this paint system for quite a while, and it's been teased for weeks. They never actually said what it was. A lot of people were saying it would be maybe an airbrush, maybe dip wash, maybe something like that. I didn't think it would ever be an airbrush. An airbrush would be way too complex. It's just, that's not the kind of thing Games Workshop is about. They're about making things very easy, and not that airbrushing is super hard, but something like a dip wash is more along the lines of what I would think Games Workshop would really tout as, here's a brand new system for you guys to use. So what the system actually is, it's two different colors of base coat spray paints, which are also going to be available in the paint pots. So there's a very, very light gray and a very, very light beige or tan color. So these are very like off-whites, and I went in the Science of Paint seminar given by one of the, basically like the guy who is in charge of the paint, you know, determining what all the paint system is going to be. And it was a very informative seminar. They may as well have called it by contrast paints, but instead of the science of paint. But he did explain why white paint, spray paint specifically, is very, very difficult to get perfectly right. White paint is made with titanium dioxide. The only other white pigment that you can use is lead, which is obviously going to be very, very bad. So what they did was they made, instead of a pure white spray paint, it's a little bit off-white. So there's bits of the titanium dioxide, which is a very, very large paint pigment, is the smallest you can grind it down to. And then they mix in bits of the gray or the light beige or tan pigments in there, which kind of help fill in all the spaces between the larger titanium dioxide pigments. So anyway, science bit over. Those are the two colors that you get. And of course you can put them over other colors, but light colors work best for the paint system. So the contrast paints are actually very, very thick. I would say they're along the lines of a completely undiluted matte medium. There are some very good photos in the seminar showing what a single coat of the contrast color does on top of models that have this one of the two paints, base coats. So basically you literally, there's the light gray. I painted this entire model, but this is the light beige. So these were painted. You can also do a bit of zenithal if you wanted. which is you know, black everywhere, and then gray or the beige on top, and then maybe even white directly down. Anyway, that's zenithal. You put the contrast color directly on top of that. So the contrast paints are sold in very large pots. You do have to keep mixing them because the pigments settle in medium. The colorless medium will be sold as separate pots, not to thin this with water, and we'll get to thinning later in the video. But basically you load up the brush with a lot more paint than you normally would. So when you dip the paintbrush first in, don't wipe any off. But basically you're meant to just goop it straight on. So basically you rinse and swirl the brush, wipe on the paper towel, that's if you change the color or whatever, and then dip into the paint. You use long strokes to brush it on. It's meant to go in one thick coat, but it is easy to use a sort of empty brush to soak up the really, really heavy concentrations that are going to be a little bit too thick or way too thick, whatever. A lot of the demo models that were shown, and you can see in some of the pictures here, there are some really heavy concentrations of the contrast color on. But, you know, if all you're going for is 3-color ready, tabletop ready, basic troops, I think it actually works really well. It's a very simple system. It's meant for beginners. It can be added on to. Obviously, you're going to be painting your metallics or whatever on top, putting your transfers or decals or stickers or whatever on top of the paint. That's, you know, what you do. This is meant for very quick base coating. Now, one thing I would like to note is that it does dry very quickly. The first arm I painted on this Poxwalker dried in about 3 minutes. It was very, very quick, and it wasn't like a hot day. There were no fans. We were inside in just normal room temperature, and it dried pretty quickly. You meant to go from a lighter color to a darker color. So for instance, I did the most well, on this one I was just trying all different sorts of colors, but in this instance you would go maybe from the brown on the horn to the green of the flesh, and then to the trousers, for example. This is the black contrast color, by the way. This is 1 coat on one leg and 2 coats on the other leg, just to try it out. And you can see the up-close photos. If you put on 2 coats of the black, which is as dark as it gets, if you put on 1 coat, it's not all that, it looks gray, really. If you put on a second coat, I think what I would do probably if I were trying to go for like a black Space Marine or something like that, put on the first coat, thin the second coat, maybe 50-50 with the medium. But it's going to take, it's a paint system, so it's going to take some practice, right? One thing that isn't really mentioned is making corrections. If you don't have a steady hand, or you make a bunch of mistakes, or you decide, oops, that is completely wrong, you can't just paint over it. You have to paint over it again with the base color. So now I did talk to Andy Hoare, who has a bunch of purple Horus Heresy models. A lot of his Horus Heresy models are this sort of purple. So if you look at this, and I only got the 1 photo, but basically over metallics, the contrast paints work pretty well. This model does need some cleaning up, but these are his test models for using the purple contrast over what is basically a lead belcher base coat. The straight contrast color came out just a way too dark for his taste, so we did thin it down about, I think he said 25% of the contrast medium, like a 3-to-1 reduction, or 1 to 3 reduction, whatever you want, however you want to put that. And that came out pretty good. There's obviously some touching up that needs to be done, but it works pretty well. So for me, the big question is, can it be made at home? Now, not everybody thinks like me, which is a good thing, but basically I think yes. I have a blog post, you can check in the description down below, about the Lester Bursley method of making your own ink washes at home. Mel the Terrain Tutor did an updated version of the same recipe. But basically it uses matte medium, flow improver, distilled water, and just normal inks you can buy at any arts and crafts store. Daler Rowney, it makes a good range, and FW make another good range. Not Forge World, but FW. These are you can I think if you've done that, or if you know someone who's done that, it's pretty easy to think, I think that could be done. You can get some thicker gel medium and mix that in a bit to make it really nice and thick instead of just normal, just like kind of quite runny matte medium. And then just experiment with a bunch of inks if you already have them. However, these inks are like $5 to $7 or pounds or euros each for each color, and each of these brands have about probably 20 or 30 different ink colors. So if you're getting even just a handful, that's a lot of money. Plus you have to get all the bottles and the jars and or whatever you're using. So if you already have it, I think these could be made at home. Of course, the Games Workshop folks won't want to hear that, but there's people who are going to try it. I'm going to try it, and if I come up with a recipe that seems to work, I'll let you know. So anyway, I hope you found that somewhat informative. If you did, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you like us, check us out on Instagram, TPS Painting Studio, on Facebook, just search for Tiny Plastic Spaceman right here in the logo, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.